You're here because you're sick of the pep talks and motivational videos. We bring you the tools and resources you can apply in the real world in a no-nonsense environment filled with people like you. The builders, creators, doers, and disruptors to energize your hustle. What's going on, Great Minds Nation? I'm Zach.
I'm Christian.
And this is another edition of Set the Tone Sunday, where we bring you the information, motivation, and inspiration you need to energize your hustle. And Great Minds Nation, today we have some straight up brothers right now that we grew up with, Indy Nation, on the line.
Naptown's finest, baby.
LiveTwoTwenty live with us right now. We want to dive in to what they've got going on. So without further ado, fellas, introduce yourselves.
Awesome. So I'm Matthew Moybon. I'm the older brother.
And I'm Joseph, younger brother.
And we started a company together that started out in the youth space, and we recently expanded to young professionals. But they're called 220 Youth Leadership, and then Live 220, all around living your second to none life. So we'll talk more about that. But Zach and Chris, thanks a lot for having us on. We're so proud of you guys for what you're doing, and just really appreciate you including us as part of the broadcast and part of Set the Tone Sundays. So we're really excited about this.
Absolutely. And before we dive into the content, because Great Minds Nation knows and you guys know as well, we want to pack in as much value as possible. How about we just do a quick shout out, let everybody know we all grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana together.
Naptown, baby.
Naptown's finest. And here we are 8 years later, and we're all aspiring entrepreneurs trying to build the life of our dreams. So how about that for a turn of events?
It goes back even further. It goes back to Shelbyville for us.
That's right.
That's right, with the pretzels.
Oh my God.
You guys put me on those pretzels. That changed my life.
Yeah, and our parents knew each other, so.
Wow. Okay, so on that note, we've taken it way back to childhood, which I love. All right, so you guys are two brothers. You guys quit your jobs in corporate America and decided to start your business. Talk to me about your childhood. What was it about your upbringing that kind of has gotten you to where you guys are now?
Go ahead. All right. So I think one thing that is kind of implicit throughout that really helped was just how close our family was. And Joseph and I know how lucky we are that we had such a great family structure. And, you know, part of that was, it was pretty amazing. Even though there was a 2-year grade difference between us, we were always hanging out with each other's friends. It was never like, you know, oh, no, you can't play with my friends because I'm older. It was always, no, we need people to play the backyard basketball, backyard football. So it was just kind of always me and Joseph together. And it ended up being, you know, we ended up playing similar sports throughout school, and then led to us, you know, being in the same fraternity at the same university, Indiana University, and then both moving to Chicago after school. So, you know, us being close, I think, was a huge component of that. And then the other big component was our dad. And our dad has always thought and acted very entrepreneurially. He started a couple companies that didn't quite pan out, but one thing that he was amazing at was always just getting us thinking outside the box, even when we were like in middle school and high school, just introducing us to the thought of entrepreneurship, you know, thinking outside of the traditional path, outside of all the traditional norms, and just knowing that, you know, if you want it, if you are willing to challenge the status quo, there's more out there for you. And so, you know, getting invested in businesses when we were in high school, our dad encouraged us, which was actually the catapult for our businesses now, to start a leadership camp as a summer job when we came back from college, instead of just going to work at the golf course. So it was getting involved in things like that early on. We just knew at some point that entrepreneurship was something that was going to be a big part of our lives. And it just timed up to be, you know, that 2 years ago we both left to do this full time. But yeah, I would say those are probably two of the biggest factors that led to us being where we are today.
Love it.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting that you bring that up, because that actually makes me want to ask a question. I'm going a little off the cuff here, but it just came to my mind. Do you believe, based on your entrepreneurial journey, do you believe that you two are natural entrepreneurs? That it's something that's always come natural to you, or is it something that you feel like you've almost cultivated through your dad, through his belief system, and then now through your own actions to kind of actually create this narrative now where you associate with being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think we've been thinking that way for longer than most people. Even for people who have parents who are entrepreneurs, I don't know that they always get that exposure and mindset that we were fortunate enough to get. So since we were 14 or 15, we've been thinking about starting a business together. And I think that's kind of what allowed us to leave our corporate jobs as early as we did. Was we just said, a long time ago, we want to do this, we want to try this. And so it's been 10 years in the making. And so we just we took that leap of faith earlier than I think most people are willing to, but it's been a conversation for 10 years or so.
Yeah, and I would just expand on that a little bit. So, Joe's talking about that it's been more of a 10-year journey, or maybe even a little longer than that. It was not something that we were born with. Same way you're not born as a leader. Same way you're not born as some, NBA player. You can have talent, but, you really have to get involved in it and hone it. So, the notion that you're born an entrepreneur or you're not, I think that's completely false. I think, you've got a lot in your guys' community and in ours too. It's full of high achievers, right? And these high achievers know how to work hard, how to solve problems. And it's just entrepreneurship is really just taking those talents and that mindset into a different context where there's a little bit more risk, a little bit more fear, a little bit more challenge, but you're just applying those same concepts into a different vacuum that, hopefully you're doing something you love, and, the upside is bigger, but also the fulfillment, the flexibility, and, all the benefits that we all love about entrepreneurship.
Gotcha. Love that.
And
I feel like young professionals fall into kind of a trap where education is so laid out, for you, and 4 years of college are laid out. But as soon as you're out on your own, you run into this, man, I really have to figure this thing out. I don't have any pathway that's laid out for me. And so I think we were fortunate enough to look at it through a different lens since we were younger. I'll never forget this one entrepreneurship class, and you know the story. But this guy came in and talked about the trap. And he was a young entrepreneur, and he was basically saying that as soon as you graduate, you go and get a good job that pays you well, and you get promoted in that job, so you start to buy nicer things, so you need to keep earning a nice salary so you can afford those nicer things. And you say you want to start a business when you're later, and then you get a girlfriend, and you get serious, and you want to buy a house, so you need more money, so you try to get promoted in that job. And so it's called this trap. And then you get the family, and you want a car. And so I just remember sending the PowerPoint to Matthew when I was a junior in school, and I was like, we can't fall into this trap. Like, this is something that we have to make sure we avoid, and we have to leave our jobs, early if we even go there and get them. So I just think that different lens of looking at things while we were in high school and college and challenging the status quo, like that, we were just lucky to find that, and would just challenge people to think about things like with that mindset, I guess.
Absolutely. I feel like my biggest frustration looking back on schooling, from elementary all the way through high school, was just, and this might not be the right word to use, so I want to use this lightly, but almost institutionalized in a way.
For sure.
Everything is so structured. It completely kills creativity, and things like art, music, entrepreneur. These are extracurricular classes that you take on the side. Meanwhile, we're taking history, math that we're never going to really use. And now, granted, some people do. English, we're reading books. I mean, some of this stuff is good, right? But in general, it doesn't. The education system doesn't give us the opportunity to think for ourselves and say, is this a core value that's actually important to me? Is this something that I would actually want to pursue? So I completely agree with you guys. And for all the Great Minds Nation viewers right now, to fill them in, obviously you guys eventually, and I think Christian was going to get to this point, you guys eventually got to a place in your jobs, because corporate America in a lot of ways is just an extension of the schooling that you already had, right? It's kind of just the next step into that. And I'm not against corporate America. I think there are a lot of people that get into a company like that. They have a lot of passion for what they do. They enjoy the people. They enjoy a lot of the perks. And for a lot of people, they're happy. But for the people who are unhappy, tell us a little bit about, and you were going to, I think you were going to get to this. How did you know it was time to flip a switch, turn the page, quit, and start your own thing?
Well, I think there's not a certain point in time necessarily where it's like I'm ready to quit. Like I know this is what I want to do, so I'm going to quit. I think it's a very long process that you have to constantly be thinking about and priming and really just making yourself prepared to take that leap of faith. What's hard is if you have a side hustle or you have a project that you're working on, moonlighting it nights and weekends, what's hard is most of your time is spent with people who aren't thinking that way. So you go back to corporate America or you go back to your job and you conform back to the rigid promotion schedule or really trying to get busy to finish certain tasks. And it's just, it's constantly kind of pulling you back in because most people aren't willing to do the things that are challenging and going out of their way with really not going for something that doesn't have a ceiling, basically, or going for something that isn't already laid out for you. And so it's not really a point in time so much as it's a process, and you have to constantly be feeding yourself the positive things that are going to help you get to that decision point. And I guess the second part of that is once you get to that decision point, you have to go before you're ready. Because if you wait until you're ready, it's just never going to happen. It's never going to be, you're never going to be perfectly ready. You're never going to be totally prepared. We maybe left a little earlier than we should have, but I think we're really happy that we took the leap when we did because it threw us right into the fire, and we had to learn how to swim. And we had to figure it out as we went.
So I don't want to get too micro, but this notion of going before you're ready, what does that mean to you all? Does that mean you guys were looking at we'll leave once we have a source of revenue with our business? We'll leave once we can't take the corporate trap anymore. What is that? Can you elaborate on that? The going before you're ready?
Yeah. So I think he nailed it because I actually had more of a trigger in my job. So when I was, I was doing pretty well at the bank and just constantly got feedback that, I was the top analyst in the group and, I was on track for that normal promotion cycle. And when my 2 years came up, they told me I wasn't getting promoted. And the reason was because some executive, in another country, in Canada, decided we're just not going to promote any of our analysts this year. And so that for me was kind of like, wow, I gave it everything that I had. And there's nothing wrong with corporate America. Certain companies, though, you just don't have control over your destiny, over your outcome. But even then, like Joseph said, it's a process. So that was December of 2014, and I didn't leave until August 2015. So it's definitely a process that you have to work on. And luckily, Joseph and I surrounded ourselves with each other because we were both thinking the same way. Right. But along those lines, we got to a point where we had tested our first program. We had a couple people that were huge fans of what we did. We had our pricing validated. We were ready to go. And we thought we were so ready to leave, and it was still hard to leave. It was like we had everything we need in place, but we're so used to this, this job, this daily commute, this salary, like everything about it. This is what everyone else around us is doing. So it's always going to be hard to break through that status quo. And it was really just thinking about, it was really asking ourselves a question like, are we really going to be happy that we waited another month until we think we'll feel better?
On top of that, I would imagine on top of that, and sorry to cut you off there, but I would imagine even on top of that, to expand upon that pressure, you had to have people in your ear saying, you guys are making a mistake, put your head down, quit being such a quote-unquote millennial, stay the course. How'd you guys deal with that, and did that even happen? Did you guys deal with naysayers during that time?
Yeah, I think it goes back to conforming and thinking about, the what ifs. What are people going to think? What if it goes south? What if we don't make as much money as we're planning on? I mean, it's always there. And I guess for me, like, I think back, like, I was traveling, I was going to Southern Missouri every single week, and just never forget, like, being in my hotel room and flipping open my laptop to watch as many YouTube videos, like, just to get that person who has been there talking to me through the screen about, like, how it's possible, how you can be, like, the small, like, in the minority, because it's so hard, and you're never just going to do it and cut it off if you don't feed yourself the information for the people you want to be like. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tricky. We both left bonuses on the table by leaving early. It would have been easy to wait till the end of the year to get those bonuses and to collect that, and that would have been a good excuse. But like Matthew said, it was like, is one more month or is X amount really gonna get us where we want to go, or should we just make this thing happen now? And I think, we both luckily had each other and we're both ready at the same time. And so it just kind of worked out. But
so one question I have too, because as Great Minds Nation knows, and then you two as well, Christian and I still have full-time jobs. So selfishly, I'm curious, and I hope Great Minds Nation can relate to this question as well. Did you guys have a certain amount of money saved up as a security fund, a moving forward fund, while you were trying to get the business off the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to talk about that first?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure. So we had a plan, right? We had a program in place. We had a high price point. We had been doing it, through this leadership camp when we were in college. It was like, okay, if we leave now, revenue will come and we won't hardly have to use any of our savings. Totally not the case, right? Making money is way slower and way harder than you think it's going to be. The expenses come way quicker. The startup costs, even for a lean business like ours, were daunting. So there was an amount of money saved up that we thought was going to be enough, but we were extremely optimistic about the business and thinking this is what's going to happen, even though it didn't. I think you have to kind of think like that, though. You have to be aggressively optimistic about where your business is going to go, or it's never going to be that decision that you're excited about. You can't go into it assuming that it's going to be a really slow process. You're not going to make money for a year. Like, you have to think aggressively about it. So even though it didn't pan out like we thought it would, leaving was the ultimate catalyst for getting the business to where we wanted it to go.
Yeah, and I would say mine was a little different because I had more time in my corporate job. So, I took advantage of everything that I could in terms of just building up savings. So, maxing out 401k in terms of the matching program, like, everyone should do that if their company has that, because it's literally free money. Right. So you have to take advantage of that first. And then it was also just having, like, automatic withdrawals come out of my checking account into a brokerage account, just to, basically have money that I couldn't touch, because I knew at some point I'd want to use it for maybe something material, but probably most likely the funds to either invest in a business or just to support myself, living expenses. And I think one of the things that helps most with that, obviously you want to get a handle on kind of what your monthly expenses would be and, what you would need monthly to cover that. And think about that in terms of how much you have saved up to kind of get a ballpark of how long you had. And so for me, that was about a year. And we didn't get paid for about a year. So, a lot of those savings went away. And I think one of the things that helped most, and it's funny, Tim Ferriss actually talks about this a lot, is for us was just playing out that worst case scenario way ahead of time. So thinking about, what if we don't make any money? What if the business fails? What are we going to do? And at first that's terrifying. It makes your heart beat fast. Like, what would you do? Like, I'm used to all this stuff. And then you start to, if you can sit with that anxiety and fear a little bit and just kind of play out the scenario. Okay, so if that happened, what would I do? And then think about, well, what could I do to prevent that or minimize the damage? And then you also have to start thinking about trade-offs, right? So you're thinking about the money that's coming in from this full-time job is amazing, right? It lets me do my normal life and not really worry about what I'm doing financially. And that's why Joseph and I stayed there longer than we probably expected to.
Right.
But then what the other question we had to ask is, how much are we sacrificing being able to put time into the business as our full-time job versus, being able to save a little bit of money and try to moonlight it, because it's just amazing. You guys know, you guys are attacking this thing with everything you got. It's awesome. And it only increases exponentially when that's your sole focus. So I think those kind of three concepts, thinking about saving as much as you can, doing some fear setting, worst case scenario, and then mitigating that. And then thinking about just, what was the third thing? I talk too much, but yeah,
Not at all, man. Not at all.
It's just really playing out that worst case scenario and then thinking about time. It's really thinking about the trade-offs of time. How much more time and save salary money is going to really help me versus me putting everything, all the time I have every week into the business.
Right. Yeah, I think the last thing on that was, we can be working and taking a chunk of our paycheck and putting it into a brokerage account or saving it for 401k. But if we do this the right way and we build the business like we're talking about, then the return on investment for investing it in those funds doesn't even compare to investing it in ourselves and using it to basically create our burn rate and grow a business that's going to pay us well, give us the freedom we want, and really allow us to do what we've always talked about doing. So there's some definitely like monetary things you have to consider. Then there's the other side of it, which is just the tremendous upside that it gives you, not only financially, but with freedom to play golf on Fridays if we want to, or Mondays, or do the things that we want to do, because flexibility was a big piece of why we wanted to leave. We wanted every day to look like a Saturday if we wanted it to.
Gotcha.
We could start throwing bowling pins at each other again, like in your basement.
Okay, so I want to take it back just a bit. So you guys talked about how you grew up and your dad was kind of coaching you guys to have an entrepreneurial mindset. You guys grew up challenging the status quo. You guys have always been in the leadership, and you spent summers kind of developing that curriculum. Yet, both of you guys did still start in corporate America. You guys both went to college. You guys were finance majors. So if there was a time in your journey where you were kind of going down the path of the trap, if you will, just this my interpretation. So how does one who is sitting in a job right now, who knows that they have something more, who has the same entrepreneurial mindset, how do they go from knowing that up here to the physical manifestation of a business? Because you guys went from that to a business, and so it's like how do so for the audience members, how do you answer questions like, what should my business do? What value do I have to bring to start a business? Just take me through that progression that got you guys to have the physical manifestation of a business.
Yeah. So, no, great question. And we definitely were on that path. And, part of that was, parents saying, our dad went to business school at Indiana. So he was like, you're going to go to business school at Indiana. And not that forcefully, but strongly encouraged. And I'm really glad I did. And the finance skills I learned in college, but especially like in corporate America, have helped tremendously with business. So I don't regret it whatsoever. But I would say for that person who is still at their job, and like you said, for some, corporate America is perfect. It's great. You can be extremely passionate, creative, and even entrepreneurial within corporate America. But for someone that knows they want more and wants to step outside of that, you have to start thinking differently than everyone else, right? So you can't be going through the traditional routine of, waking up, going to work, maybe getting that workout in, after work, and then getting home by 7:30, making dinner. By the time you get, it's 9:30, it's time for bed, right? So you got to kind of think about, how can I disrupt this routine, whether it's using my nights, using my mornings, or using my weekends, to actually put time in, because really that's the most important component. And I'm sure you guys have I know you guys have talked about this a lot, is just consistency, right? With the routine. Because everything's about putting time in, right? Nothing materializes out of thin air, including passion. And so that's where I was going to go next, is for that person who knows they want to start a business, but maybe doesn't know exactly what value they would provide. One of the coolest things I think Joseph and I have learned from reflecting, kind of looking back on what we've done, but also through a lot of our research and learning about this new industry, which you guys are definitely a part of, called the expert industry. You're really just leveraging your own story, your natural talents, and your own interests to create value for other people, because you're spending time on things that other people either haven't spent the time on or don't really want to spend the time on. They want the cliff notes, right? And that's what people are willing to pay for. So I think really thinking about, I think sometimes people think too much about what they would do to start a business.
Make it too complicated.
So think about, like, what do you do in your free time when no one's telling you what you have to do, right? When you have a huge chunk of time and not thinking about necessarily going to drink at the bar with a friend, right? Think about, when I'm alone and I have some time, like, what are the articles that I read? Or what are the books that I purchase automatically? Or look at your credit card statement. What are the things that I spend money on every week that isn't rent or a mortgage or, something that's a living expense, something that, I just get excited about spending money on? And, just how do I fill my time every week? And think about, what do people tell me I'm good at? And what is a unique story or challenge that I've overcome in my past that I could help other people with, and that I know other people suffer with? And, one of the cool things was we started out doing our business mainly for youth. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things we've done recently is hired a business coach. And she kind of was outside coming in, right, and had this perspective of, you guys have an amazing story that you could share with young professionals who, are at a job that they don't love and aren't necessarily looking to start a business. Maybe they are, but are looking to really change what they're doing on every day. Maybe it's jumping industries completely or going for their dream job way before they're ready, and just, not settling for anything less than what we call your second to none life or your ultimate life.
That's really good, Chris. I was going to say two things on that. One is read The Millionaire Messenger. That's like one of my favorite books. I know we've recommended it to you guys. It just breaks down how easy it is to start a business and how you don't have to have expertise. You don't have to necessarily have experience. You just have to have a story, no funding. Yeah, you just have to have a story. And you have to leverage that story and create a business around it. And in today's day and age, you can start a business for, less than $5,000, probably even less than that. And then the second part of that was for people who are complicating it. Tony Robbins says successful businesses really just know their audience better than anyone else and build an irresistible offer.
Gotcha. So you guys kind of touched into the question that I was going to go to. I was going to transition into, because you started off with LiveTwoTwenty and you guys have since kind of transitioned into the Young Professional Network, and it sounds like you guys have gotten that from your business coach. Do you guys want to elaborate on that, or
on the business coach?
Just on the shift, because I just want people to realize the importance of just self-assessing and diagnosing and being able to pivot. And say, we thought that this was our MVP in our business, but we weren't afraid to take a pivot and try something different. Just that transitional period for you guys. Was that stressful? Just walk me through it.
So it's been more of an addition to the business. So the young professional side of it is really just another component of the business. And what's cool is, it really is just sharing lessons learned from our entrepreneurial journey. Mm-hmm. But what we've been able to help young professionals with is the same process that we're teaching high school students, the same process we're using for college students. It's really this whole top performer mindset and tools and strategies that we're just trying to help high school students with. So some of the same stuff we talked about earlier about being in the system, going through the motions in college and then going to that first job. We're trying to disrupt that as early as high school for students. And so just adding on that young professional component was really just tweaking the message to be more for people our age, based on the journey that we kind of went through ourselves. The high school to college to corporate America system that we feel lucky that we were able to break out of.
Yeah, and I would say too, it really is a framework. So it applies no matter what your situation is. And really all it is thinking unrealistically, we call it, about your future. So thinking 10 years down the road, what do you want your life to look like?
Right.
So that could be you're in high school thinking about in professional years, or you're young professional thinking about, you know, your early 30s, mid 30s. And then you just work backwards and say, okay, if I wanted that, what do I need to start doing right now?
Right.
And a lot of times that's something very different than what you're doing, just because of, like I said, all the traditional assumptions about young professionals.
Yeah, and it was interesting when we added this component and we went out and tested some of our high school tools that we do, like this 10-year unrealistic vision activity, doing it with some of the young professionals, peers of mine. They're like, wow, I never really thought that way about my life. I never thought about what's coming when I'm 35 or 36 years old. And so it just kind of reframes, like, you have control over what happens when you're 35 or 36. You just can't think about it when you're 35. You have to start thinking about it now.
Right.
And you just blocks and set the goals and achieve the goals to get there. So same process. It's just an addition to the business.
Gotcha.
So you guys touched on the aggressive goals now numerous times. And in fact, we've had conversations where you've encouraged Christian and I to make our goals slightly more aggressive. Can you touch on the influence behind those, where you kind of got the concept of aggressive goals, and then kind of give an example of what an aggressive goal might look like for our audience?
For sure. So I think there are definitely other books that talk about it in concepts like 10x thinking, and a lot of people talk about setting big goals. For us, I think the two strongest influences, number one, and I talk about him a lot because he's my hero, but Tim Ferriss. And in the 4-Hour Work Week, there's an excerpt that I think everybody should read once a week that talks about how unrealistic goals are easier to achieve than realistic goals. Talks a lot about unrealistic goals being a lot less crowded because most people don't think they can achieve them. So realistic goals are most competitive, right? So thinking about the salary, the promotion, like there's so many young professionals going for that. And then it also talks about payoff. So you're going to be way more motivated to achieve an unrealistic goal than you are a realistic goal. So I think Tim talks really well about those two. And then the other one who's Joseph's hero, and he's gotten me on board, is Will Smith. And it's a video that
I wonder where he got that one.
There is. That was from Chris through the grapevine. So thank you for that, because we use that all the time. And Will Smith basically says, what's the point of being realistic? If I say I'm going to do it, it's already done. And he provides examples like Edison and the Wright brothers of, they were told their goals were unrealistic at some point. And we really just break it down to say, unrealistic is just a word that people use when they either haven't seen it done or they don't think it's possible, or maybe they tried and failed. 100%. And the way that you make it go unrealistic is really, you don't have to do anything that you're not normally doing. So take a normal goal you have, for example. So whether it's I want to start a business full time by a certain age, or I want to make a certain amount of money. To make it unrealistic, all you have to do is increase the target, and 10x is normally a good metric to use. So increase that metric, the number goal, by 10x, or shorten the timeline. So if you say I want to do this in 5 years, challenge yourself. Can I do this in the next year? Can I do this in 6 months? And what I think the quote that best illustrates this, and one of our favorites that we talk about all the time, is from James Cameron, who directed Avatar and Titanic and a million movies, Terminator. And he says, if you set your goals ridiculously high and it's a failure, you're still going to fail above everyone else's successes because nobody was willing to set their goals that high. So you think about modern day people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all these people who start out saying pretty outrageous things. They just take action every day that's unrealistic, that lines up with those unrealistic goals, and eventually, it starts to make progress.
That brings up an interesting point. So when we talk about this, almost like this law of averages, where it's not really the law of averages, but it's like everybody has these average goals, and if you shoot for an above average goal, you're in a smaller category. What do you think about the idea of the law of abundance, where there's more than enough? Because I hear a lot of people say, I've got an idea, but there's so many people who already do it, or A lot of people always come up with an excuse as to why it won't happen because there's already somebody doing it or somebody who has the idea. So what's kind of your mindset and just your thoughts in general around the law of abundance, that there's more than enough to go around for everybody? It's just up to you to take it.
And to add on that, I think what you're saying also with that is just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that I can't start that as well. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, along those lines for us, there's a lot of people doing what we do. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of, once we had left and we started to find some of these examples, not that we hadn't done research before, but initially it was terrifying when you go on someone's website and they have the same motto, same lingo, same service offerings as you do. I mean, it is very scary, and we were rattled by that multiple times. But I've kind of come to learn that, you can offer something unique to different people. And everyone kind of has a unique offering, whether they're entrepreneurs or not. But, people have told us, your story is the most unique thing that you have, and no one can take that away from you. And so we've just kind of started to use our story and really leverage that to help young professionals, to help high school students, to help college students, to help Greek students, because it's our story and that's what we have expertise in. And, for people who are making that, I would call it an excuse. Like, there's other people out there doing it. Every business is built on something that has already been invented. So all you're doing is you're never reinventing the wheel. You're just making the wheel a little better. And so for anyone that's making that excuse, you would argue that any product, service, anything that comes out is really just making a better wheel. It's not reinventing anything.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. And it was terrifying at first. And we learned a lot about our business as soon as we left that we didn't know before we left. And so we were using search terms that we didn't even know to use before. And we were finding all these businesses, and it was just like, oh my God. It was like, did we mess up? Like, should we not have left to do this? And, what's our credibility? Like, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? The one thing that I think has completely changed is how we look at that since we left. When we see that now, we get excited. And the reason is because that means that there's other people out there that want whatever you're going to offer, right? So it's basically validation that you're doing something that other people want. What's crazy about this expert industry is there are multi-millionaires that none of us have even heard of. And we do a lot of research. Which is crazy to think about, right? It's like, oh no, to do really well, like we probably know those people. There's so many people doing extremely well that you've never heard of. Right. And so when you see somebody that's doing something that you want to do, that's normally a really good sign. Yeah. And the other thing I would say too is that unless you're in the banking industry or the grocery industry or something like that, if you're doing a business around your story, your passions, your personal interests and wanting to make an impact on the world and make people better, if you run across a competitor, it's more likely going to be a partner that you can use to, like you say, look at what we're doing right now. I mean, it's amazing. Like, we can just amplify each other's message, help each other's community, and we both have similar interests, right? We want to grow our impact. So there's ways for you to help each other, and it's an amazing way to connect and build a network, honestly, a lot faster than some of those networking events that I hate.
Oh my God, the forced ones,
the worst ones where you're networking inside of an industry that you're not even interested in. And so actually that's kind of a good question to even touch on too. And I don't know if you want to take it down a different path.
I think just to sum up, so you guys listen to Tim Ferriss, and then there's Will Smith out there. We listen to Gary Vee a lot, and he has this this theory that it's all about getting people's attention. And taste is subjective, right? Just because I like LeBron James doesn't mean I can't also appreciate Kevin Durant, or just because I'm a big fan of Will Smith doesn't mean I can't watch Kevin Hart movies. I mean, we're not fighting for the same thing, and I think if you're looking at it in that silo to the audience viewing, you can take it much more further, much more quickly when you partner with people that are on the same journey as you. So just reiterating that point. The other thing, you guys have a really practical way of looking at starting a business, and you really talk about kind of telling your story. That I think when you're telling your story, you're your most authentic self. And also that, like to your point, Joseph, that is the most unique thing you have. So what are some tools that you guys use to get people's attention and push your story out?
Just as far as like what we use for our business.
Right, in your business, what are your tools of getting the word out, getting people's attention, and building your brand and your story?
Definitely. So I would say it's evolved a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely from when we left. When we left, we were basically trying to find programs. So we were just kind of doing outreach to potential, partners or to potential clients, or to people that we knew, were really strong in the education industry or had connections that we thought may be valuable, or they may be able to provide us with insight. And it's definitely evolved into much more of a tell your story through blog. Our blog is one of our main features. We could definitely be a little bit better on social media. We're getting there, and probably could use some of you guys' help on that too, for sure. But yeah, I think it's just like you said, when you're doing a business that's around your story and stuff that's really just an extension of your life, it makes it so much easier to tell that story and to promote it. So, for me, who basically had never posted on social media almost before starting this business, it just made sense for me to talk about, things that I would be doing in my free time anyway, and putting that into a business and telling that as a story. And I think the people that we really look up to, there's Tim, but there's Tony Robbins, Ramit Sethi, Ryan Holiday, you name it. All have kind of adopted this online community that they build because it's such an easy way for people to get connected. So, like you guys are doing right now, leveraging like these amazing social tools and technology just to bring like-minded people together. And, what's been really cool is you realize the more people you get around you, the less you have to tell your story. And the more it is about connecting like-minded people to tell their story, share their challenges, share things that have worked well, and just be a source of motivation to say, hey, you're not alone here. Like there's a huge group of people that have combinations.
That's super interesting that you bring that up, actually, because it's almost like the crabs in a barrel, but with a little twist on it, because I found myself, Christian will attest to this too, early on in the process when we started Great Minds, it was laboring. It took so much energy to explain to people what we were doing. They didn't understand, and it was like, all right, guys, look, we're just doing it, okay? And it's weird because we went to an event in San Diego 2 weeks ago, $1 Billion Body. Shout out Nicholas Barely. We really appreciate the event. It was a great time. But we went there and we were around so many like-minded individuals, and the conversation was not around convincing people what we did, but it was around literally getting that. Like, it didn't take anything for them to be excited about what we were doing and wanting to get involved in what we were doing.
That's a good point.
And so I think to piggyback off of what you're saying is that, and this is something that another person we've connected with, Frankly Fit, he started a company, Frankie Vignon, talks about getting in the arena, which is just getting around the people that are doing what it is that you want to do. And it makes it so much easier, and you start to gain that momentum along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say along the same lines as the story, you have to, early on, you have to leverage your story, and all the way throughout, you have to leverage your story. But when you get in the arena with people, I think it just comes that much easier because people are excited about your story, or they can relate to your story, or it's just easier to find the commonality. I mean, it's just, when we have a conversation, it's so exciting. We talk for way longer than we want to, or had planned on, but it's just because there's so many of the same ups and downs that we're both going through. So yeah, I totally agree. I mean, getting in the arena or getting around like-minded people, or just throwing that YouTube video up that gets you excited about your business, like any of those things that are the positive influences, I mean, that's what you have to latch onto. That's what you have to continue to see and talk about and listen to.
Go ahead.
So
go for it.
I don't know where you want to take the convo,
for it,
but
man.
there's one thing that I do want to touch on, because you guys kind of talked about it early on, and you just said it, the positive experience that comes with doing something that you want to do. But we all know on the entrepreneurial journey, and you guys actually posted this picture on your Instagram of the way you think your journey is going to go and the way it actually happens. So can you talk to Great Minds Nation about a setback that you guys have faced, some adversity, how you dealt with it, how you overcame it, and then just give some insight around that.
We were laughing before this because we were kind of, this is like one of the first interviews we've done. And we were just laughing about how many funny stories we have looking back at just the total waste of time, failure. Like, it's awesome to look back on.
We did that last night. The exact
same thing last night, man.
You have this idea and you're like, we watched this how-to webinar thing, and we were like, oh my God, we are going to do webinars, and we're going to make millions of dollars doing webinars. Like, how could parents not jump on and want to buy our program for their kids? And we've spent a whole maybe 2 or 3 weeks working on perfecting a webinar, and we promoted it at this community event in Chicago, and one lady shows up, and we thought we were going to have hundreds of people on this thing. And it's just funny to look back, but I think our mindset around it was always the right one. And for us, it was like, this was terrible. You can look back at it, but that's going to be a chapter in the book. Like that's going to be something we write about later on. Like that's a chapter, because you just have to have that mentality of it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. And you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be aware, and you have to just know going in that it's going to look like that diagram with all the terrible obstacles that are coming. But yeah, I mean, it's just fun to look back on, and you.
I love that. So real quick question. We've gotten kind of up here with the business, and you guys have added a lot of value. I think it really comes down to, just to sum up everything that you just said, just sticking with it and putting time into the things that you value. When I look at you guys' story, you guys just were very self-aware of what you wanted to do, that you needed more and wanted more, and you started putting time into what that might look like. And then you guys set very aggressive goals, and weren't afraid to take chances, and also weren't afraid to make adjustments when you saw the progress of something, or maybe if it wasn't any progress in a different area. So kudos to that. But I gotta ask, you guys are brothers. I know we're business partners, and that comes with its challenges. What's it like growing up or doing a business with your brother? Any sibling rivalry there? Because I know you guys are both competitive as hell, especially you, Joseph. Joseph, you are competitive as hell, man. Like, there's been times in this interview where Matthew's like had a great response, and Joseph's face like, shit, I wish I would have said that.
In addition to working together, we live together. So
okay.
So we get a lot of time together. So luckily, we get along really well for the most part. But man, do our differences really cause some problems at times that we overcome pretty quickly. But it's pretty funny. I mean, we play tennis almost every day, and whoever loses is not going to be very happy for a couple hours. And same thing with FIFA soccer. So yeah, whoever loses is just pretty inconsolable. But yeah, one of the things that I think is amazing is that we kind of fell into each other, having being able to build a business with our brother. But I think one thing that works really well is we complement each other really well. So I always say, like, I'm the guy who can kind of have the vision at the beginning, and then I'm really good at all of the minor details, but I have no idea how to get from A to C. And Joseph does the most important part, which is actually the strategy and implementation for how to get us to the finish line. So just a lot of funny little quirks like that. Joseph probably should be talking more than me, because I think he's got more to say on this.
By the way, before you answer that, who's better in FIFA?
I'm ahead right now.
I love that, man.
Our tennis and our FIFA, but Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's been some things that have been hard about it, but there's also been some things that I think have just been instrumental in the whole business and getting it from where it was early on to where we are now. Knowing your business partner better than anyone else is a huge strength of ours. And also having each other's best interests all the time, no matter what, has also been a huge strength. And I think sometimes partners, when they go in together, don't have that. And the other thing is we're very similar in a lot of ways. So we always just kind of live and breathe our business, whether it's, on a weekend, on a weekday, when we're doing the business, when we're not. So all those things I think are just kind of more evidence as to why we've been able to do it the way we have. And we've never felt better about it. But that's been consistent throughout. So it's just always been kind of a 50-50 tag team approach to everything. And I think we both carry each other's weight on the bad days, and on the good days, it's awesome. So
yeah, I would say, to Great Minds Nation, for anybody who's thinking about, what's my next step and thinking about a business partner, I would say the thing that really makes it work, if it boils down to it, is Joseph and I just really have a shared vision for what we think, for where we want this business to go and how we want to support our lifestyle. And then, just knowing, like, do you guys have the same goals? Do you have the same core values, so that you can constantly be, in sync and pick each other up when you're down and celebrate together when everything's really good?
Matthew, I think Joseph wanted to get the last word there. So it's funny that you guys say that.
That's funny you say that. My face made you guys think that. That's hilarious. But I think that's the other part of it is, like, we don't feel like it's really not a competitive thing. Yeah. And that's like at a high level, what's been so powerful is, right, I don't care if he takes the call or if I take the call, or if he goes in to get the big contract, or it hasn't ever felt like a competitive nature. It's more supportive, and that sounds a little cliche, but it's kind of been the truth, and it's been hugely helpful for us. So he got the last word in there, but I guess I'll get it next time. And
who's keeping score, right? I like that. And you know what? I love that, man. It goes back to the point that we made earlier. It's all about the law of abundance. I mean, there's more to go out there. There's something to go out there for everybody. And it's really, you kind of do yourself a disservice when you look at it as everything's competition. We are all in this together. And as long as your bottom line's going where you want it to be, that's all you can ask for, especially as business owners. So, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. We are listening to two brothers who were in corporate America, very, very high performers. I mean, we talked about how they already had their bonuses, they were ready to go, decided to walk out on a limb, take a step away from corporate America, get out of the rat race and the trap. And they've been very successful. So tell our audience how to find you guys. You guys just recently have a new website. Tell us how to find you. What are your handles, social media? And then we got one last question to get you guys out of here.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think the best way to get engaged with us would be to go to our website. So it's LiveTwoTwenty.com, all spelled out. So LiveTwo. TWENTY.com. And I think the best thing to do would be to sign up for that free 7-day challenge we have right on the homepage. So it's just 7 emails. It's free, and basically just comes in your inbox every morning. And it basically addresses what we think are the 7 greatest obstacles that young professionals face when they're thinking about living their ultimate life. So making that change to either start a business or go for their dream job or just make a transformational change in their life. I think that's the best way to kind of get connected with us. As far as social,
yeah, we're not on social a ton, but our youth pages, our Twitter and our Facebook are both 220 Leadership, so 220 Leadership, and you can connect with us on both of those too.
Perfect. We'll put those links in as well for the audience. We'll put those in the description, those links as well. But guys, definitely would want to check that out. If you're a young professional who's kind of looking to make that next move, if you have questions, you don't know kind of where you want to take it, definitely check that out. 7 steps, very highly effective, very well written. Matthew, your blog, you have a hell of a blog, and you guys' approach is very practical and chronological. So definitely check that out. Great resource. Last, throughout this whole journey, we've kind of covered your story. What's the one thing thing you guys, the one takeaway, the things that you guys have learned about yourself and just about your journey as well. Maybe like a piece of advice or just one big takeaway from you guys to wrap it up.
So I think, I don't know if this would have been my takeaway when we started this interview, but it was something that you said that I think people really should latch onto. And you talked about the law of abundance, and there's plenty to go around for everybody. I would just really challenge Great Minds Nation, if you're thinking about making a big change, instead of thinking about abundance as in like, oh, there's something out there that I can have. Think about it as something that I can go get, that I can create for myself, right? So we just wrote a post about this. It's something that we just believe in so fiercely. We actually just reached out to Jocko Willink, who talks about extreme ownership, but it's really just owning the outcomes in your life. And if there's something that you don't like, or there's something that you really want, make a change. You're going to have to do some things differently. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to take some chances. But in the end, you own the outcomes of your life, whether you recognize that or not. So just claim it. Instead of thinking, is it out there? Just go create it and go claim it for yourself.
I love that. That's great advice.
Great Minds Nation.
Well, wait, let's not forget about Joseph.
I know you don't want to make Joseph mad.
That's all we needed. That's
Perfect.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate you coming on. Great Minds Nation, you heard it from 220 Leadership first, or LiveTwoTwenty, whichever one you guys prefer. Go out and claim the life of your dreams. So with that being said, we're going to bring you Set the Tone Sunday every Sunday till the day we die. Thank you guys so much for coming onto the show. This has been a long time coming, and we are beyond stoked to have you. We will catch up later. Until then, be good.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys, for what you're doing.